So now let's take a look at the exam guide and break down what it is that we're going to need to do to pass this exam and how we're going to have to study. So the first thing is the content outline. This is basically the general domains we're going to have to focus our time on. The first being Cloud Concepts. This is worth 15 to 25% of the exam. Then you have Azure Core Services. This is worth 30 to 35% of the exam. Then you have Security, Privacy, Compliance, and Trust. This is 25 to 30% of the exam. And then you have Pricing and Support, which is 20 to 25% of the exam. You'll notice that there are ranges here. So the thing is that it's not a guarantee that exactly 25% of the questions are going to be of that sort. So just be aware of that. Then on to grading. In order to pass this exam, you have to score a 700 out of 1,000. So generally, what you're trying to get is around 70% to pass. I say around because you could get exactly 700 and you could fail because Azure uses scaled scoring, meaning that the raw score that you get doesn't necessarily reflect the final score. So you're going to want to score a bit higher than 70%. So you want to aim for 75% or higher. The type of questions you'll see on the exam, we'll talk about here in a moment, but there are between 40 to 60 questions. So that means you have the chance of getting 12 to 18 questions wrong. I put an asterisk here because people who've actually taken the exam have reported only being presented with 30 questions. And I even reached out to Azure support to clarify that, to say, what is the real number? And their official answer was 40 to 60. But I know that when people are taking the exam, their experience is different. There's not much I can do about it. It's just that's what it is. It's going to be a bit fluid in terms of what your experience is going to be. But let's just go with this and say there's 40 to 60 questions. In terms of the format of the questions, you're going to see multiple choice. You're going to see multiple answer. You're going to see maybe drag and drop. And then you might see a hot area. Hot area usually just means like a couple drop downs where you have to answer two things at once. And the duration of the exam is 60 minutes. So that means you get 1 minute per question, roughly around that time. But the exam time is 60 minutes, but the seat time is 90 minutes. So seat time refers to the amount of time that you should allocate for the actual exam so that you have time that includes reviewing the instructions before you start your exam, re-accepting the NDA, completing the actual exam itself, which is the exam time, 60 minutes, and then provide feedback at the end of the exam, which is generally optional. And the last thing is, how long is this certification going to be valid for? And it's going to be valid for 24 months. So that means you're going to be able to hold on this for 2 years before you have to get recertified. So there you go. So now I just wanted to quickly show you the exam guide. They don't call their exam guide literally exam guide. It's the Microsoft Azure Fundamentals Skills Measured. And so this gives you pretty much the information for the breakdowns in terms of what stuff you might need to learn. But that doesn't mean necessarily everything that is listed in here is actually on the exam. But let's just quickly go through it so you have an idea. So the first is the Cloud Concepts domain. And in here, we need to know cloud terms such as availability, scalability, elasticity, fault tolerance, disaster recovery, agility. I've never seen that on the exam before, but they have it listed there. Then we have to describe the economics of scale, CAPEX versus OPEX, consumption-based models. Then you have to describe the different types of cloud models, such as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Then we have to describe public, private, and hybrid cloud models. So there's that there. Then you have to know a bunch of different core services for Azure. So these ones, I would call them global infrastructure. They mostly have to do with networking. Then you have all your core services here. And then more core services or extended services, I suppose. Then management tools. Then you have your security, privacy, compliance, and trust. So more networking components around security, but these don't really show up in the exam that much, but I've covered them anyway, just in case. Then Azure Identity, so that's creating accounts, giving access to people. The big one there is really Azure Active Directory. Then other security tools. So this is just knowing about things like the Security Center, which is a security tool, or just security services within Azure. Then we have governance. So this is going to be like policies, role-based access, just general access that has to do, but kind of with Azure identities up here. Then monitoring tools. Then we have compliance data protection standards. This is generally just pointing to websites. So the Trust Center is just a website that lists compliance information. Then we have describe pricing, SLAs, life cycle. So understanding the subscriptions. So, free versus student versus enterprise. Then here, it's just a bunch of pricing. So like they have a pricing calculator and a TCO calculator, and understanding the support plans, and then understanding the SLAs. And then there's life cycle stuff like understanding general availability. So yeah, there you go. That's the exam guide outline. They have stuff down here below about changes. That doesn't really matter. But yeah, that is the exam guide outline. If you want more information about the actual exam policies, this page is really good for that. I got this from the Azure support team. So it says exam policies and FAQs. So this would be about like retiring certifications, or like how to book your exam, or they would have information here about retake. So what would happen if you paid for it and like you missed it, or how many retakes would you get, or how long the exam hours are. So there's a lot of information here. So if you just want to go scroll through it, but yeah, here, like they don't say on the exam that it's 60 minutes. They just say, oh, for general fundamental exams, there's 60 minutes. So we just have to assume that's the time you get on the AZ900. But yeah, just check out that page and check this out if it interests you, but you don't really have to, because we cover everything in the course that you need to know. But I just wanted those resources. I wanted to make you aware of those resources just in case.